The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Empowering voters, defending democracy is our message. Elections and votings are core concerns for the League. We are committed to providing fact-based information about issues and positions candidates take on those issues to help voters make their own decisions and participate in the electoral process. We envision a democracy where everyone has the right, the knowledge, the confidence, and the opportunity to participate. The League of Women Voters never supports or opposes candidates for office or political parties. Any use of the League name or footage from this debate in campaign materials or advertising of any kind, including internet, social media, cable, or television, is not authorized by the League of Women Voters. Membership in the League is open to people 16 years and older of all gender identities. With 100 years of experience, the League is one of America's oldest and most trusted civic nonprofit organizations. Partnering with the League in presenting this forum, we welcome the Morris County branch of the NAACP and their president, Vanessa Brown. We are grateful for the nonpartisan participation and support and look forward to continuing our work together. I'd like to introduce Vanessa.
Hi, good evening, everyone. And thank you again to the League of Women Voters for the invitation to partner on such a wonderful event. We too are nonpartisan, but very political. We believe that politics is local. The NAACP and my role is I am the third vice president for the state conference of the NAACP and the president for the Morris County branch. Our branch has over several hundred members, and our NAACP national office has over 2 million members throughout the country. Our vision is to ensure a society in which all individuals have equal rights. And we are the oldest civil rights organization in the nation. We are over 112 years old. And our role is to help our citizens obtain democracy. We're activists. We inform the public of adverse effects of racial discrimination and to seek its elimination, educate everyone on their constitutional rights and exercise those rights, and to take in any other lawful actions in furtherance of these objections. So we've been around a long time. We offer everyone the opportunity to join us, to visit our national website at naacp.org. You may become a member of our branch or where you live or work, and it's $30 annually. We have youth councils, we have college chapters throughout the country. In New Jersey and Morris County particularly has branches all throughout. So tonight, you'll see a part of what democracy looks like. There'll be questions and answers. And more importantly, we also take people to the polls. We look forward to people participating and voting. We help register people to vote and other things that go on in our country. And further than that, we're also wanting to be a part of the decision-making in terms of who will be our candidates in these elections. So with that being said, again, we thank you again for the partnership and look forward to partnering with you again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. We encourage everyone to go to vote411.org, a one-stop site for information on all aspects of voting in New Jersey, with information about all candidates up and down the ballot. And please visit our website, lwvmorrisarea.org, and the New Jersey League website, lwvnj.org, which addresses the latest in voting concerns. All forums conducted by New Jersey Leagues can be viewed on the NJ website, lwvnj.org, and on vote411.org. This forum is being live streamed on the Morristown Area League YouTube channel and will be available there for viewing afterwards. Our next confirmed forum is for the Chatham Township Committee, which is on September 28th at 7 p.m. It's also a virtual event. At this time, I would like to introduce our moderator, Michelle Borough, who is a league-trained moderator and who is not from our voting district. Michelle will introduce the candidates and outline the format for this evening.
Thank you and good evening all. The rules for tonight's debate have been developed by the League of Women Voters of the Morristown area and the Morris County branch of the NAACP, and they have been agreed to by the candidates. The format is with a 2-minute opening statement by each candidate they will be speaking in alphabetical order. Then the candidates will answer questions which were submitted by the public. Each candidate has 1 minute to answer, and there is a time for a 30-second rebuttal if requested. And we will close with a 2-minute statement in reverse of opening order. We will start, as I said, we will start alphabetically, and then we will rotate through the candidates. Tonight, we are going to hear from the 3 candidates running for 2 seats for a 3-year term on the Chatham Borough Council. They are alphabetically Freddie Bickness, Republican, Carolyn Dempsey, Democrat, and Jocelyn Matheson, Democrat. We are going to start with our 2-minute opening statement with Mr. Bickness.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters and the NAACP. I wish this were live so we could see our neighbors, but maybe next year these debates can be live. Let's just all hope. I'm Freddie Bickness, the Republican in the race for Chatham Borough Council. I've lived on North Hillside Avenue for 11 years with my wife, who was a Korean immigrant, and our 2 children. And they go to the public schools, Milton School and the middle school. I've been an attorney since I graduated from law school in 2001, and I have a business degree from Rutgers before that. I was basically concentrating on financial and business litigation, Wall Street, as well as smaller New Jersey law firms. I have recently decided to take a break from law practice as my wife, has a great career, and I'm helping out with that, and I am doing a lot more around the house and with the kids. And hey, that gives me more time. Should I be elected, I would have a lot more time to devote to the public service that is very interesting to me. I am a moderate Republican. I believe, of course, in fiscal responsibility and lower taxes or trying to stabilize tax rates. But on social issues and other issues, national issues, I tend to be moderate. And sometimes I get called a liberal by the people who are, real conservatives. So I hope that I don't get lumped in with people who are really right wing, because I'm not one of those. I believe, for example, climate change is real. I also believe that we need balance on the council. We have 7-0 right now, all Democrat, and I don't think it would hurt anything to have 1 or 2 Republicans to get a different perspective, to get some balance and different ideas, a fresh voice, so that when something new comes up like COVID out of nowhere, you can have different perspectives and people can talk things out rather than having groupthink in an echo chamber, which is never the best way to decide things. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dempsey.
Welcome, everyone, and I want to thank you for joining us tonight. I would like to thank my fellow candidates, Freddie Bickness and Jocelyn Matheson, and I would like to thank the League of Women Voters and the NAACP for hosting this forum, which is so important and such an important democratic service to our voters. Our family moved to Chatham 20 years ago after attending the 4th of July parade and falling in love with the town. I've been active in Chatham from the beginning, through our church, our children's schools, and through lots of volunteer work in Chatham. I ran for Borough Council 3 years ago to bring more empathetic leadership, broader representation, and creative new ideas to the borough. Many of these new ideas came from you, our neighbors. I was thrilled when Jocelyn Matheson stepped up to run with me 3 years ago. Her perspective and experience in local government is invaluable on the Borough Council. I currently serve as Borough Council President, and a few of the committees on which I've been honored to serve are the Historic Preservation Commission, on which I was a member prior to being on the Borough Council. I'm Chair of the Public Works Community Services Committee, liaison to the Board of Ed, the Joint Rec Committee, and the Public Arts Council. I love helping people, whether it's addressing the speed limit on a neighboring street or bringing vitality to our downtown through our concert series, or helping refurbish our parks to make them more enjoyable for our residents through new tennis courts, basketball courts, and trails. Solving problems and enhancing our community is why I'm on the council and why I'm running for re-election. Jocelyn and I will continue to listen to your needs and to work to make this great town we live in even better. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Matheson.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters and the NAACP for sponsoring this important forum and for the critical work that you do on voter registration, voter education, voting rights, and outreach. I'd also like to thank Carolyn Dempsey for being an amazing partner in this campaign and on the council, and Freddie Bickney's for being here. For democracy to work, it is important to have broad participation. Serving on Borough Council was not my introduction to local government. Before that, I worked as an assistant to the city manager. I've been a city department director, and I've been a consultant to municipalities in New Jersey and across the country. In all of my work, I can look back and find ways that I've made a real difference. I believe that I've made a difference in Chatham as well. I chaired our Budget and Finance Committee for the past 2 years, including when the bottom dropped out of parking revenues due to the COVID crisis. We had to roll up our sleeves to cut costs and maintain services without jeopardizing our AAA bond rating or overburdening our residents. I am proud of the results. As chair of the Communications and Technology Committee, I pushed to dramatically expand how we communicate with residents, which helped us when the pandemic hit and during 2 major natural disasters. I led the charge on better ways to hear from constituents on everything from garbage collection to playgrounds to playing fields. As a direct result of my work, residents can apply for and receive pet licenses and alarm permits online. Soon, all licenses and permits will be online. The borough is not an island, and we have been touched by issues facing the rest of the country. Worries about school shootings, marijuana legislation, and reports from Black, Hispanic, and Asian American and Pacific Islander residents about increasing intolerance. We have worked hard to listen and learn and move forward in a positive way, even in areas where there is disagreement. While the country continues to be fractured, Chatham Borough has become a friendlier and more welcoming place, thanks in part to the tone set by this council. We have done a lot in 3 years, but there is more work to do, and I would be honored to continue to work on behalf of all residents to make Chatham an even better place to live. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There are several questions that have been proposed regarding the downtown. So we'll start with, what would you do to revitalize the downtown in terms of attracting new businesses and improving its overall appearance and diversity? Starting with Ms. Dempsey.
Thank you. One of our goals 3 years ago when Jocelyn and I ran was to improve the downtown. Part of that effort has been trying to build community. And one of the things I'm very proud of is starting the summer concert series, which not only builds community, but also brings people into our downtown. Residents shop at and attend the local restaurants, and it has it's started to be a tradition. I'm also hopeful for some smart redevelopment to help our downtown and look forward to the future in Chatham.
Thank you. Ms. Matheson.
Thank you very much. The downtown is a much more thriving place than it was 3 years ago. We have people who gather for ice cream next to the library, and we have lots of people sitting outside eating, and we have many more restaurants than we had 3 years ago. So I think we're on the right path, but there is definitely more that can be done. One of the specific things that we need to do is really focus on some of the buildings where they're crumbling or where work isn't happening. So, for example, there's the building with the paint store needs to there's a plan to have it come down and be replaced, but there's no one pushing to make that happen more quickly. So I think that we can be more aggressive in that area. We do now have an economic development advisory committee who works with the downtown merchants and works with the municipality to help them on everything from issues related to downtown seating, to more places to eat your carry-out food, to communicating with them about other programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bickness.
Yes, there's a lot of shops downtown that are empty. This may be partly due to COVID, but it's also economic cycles. And I think we have to do whatever we can to improve the overall economy. And one idea that people have is this proposed development that would be right near downtown in a place called Post Office Plaza, which is a 5-acre spot. And it's really blighted right now. That area is not being used much. I would be okay with that as long as it were small, a fairly small scale. Otherwise, I wouldn't want to do it because I think you don't want to increase traffic too much. You don't want to, harm the overall charm of this small town and make it look like a completely different town. I would also, of course, support sidewalk dining and shop local promotional events and give whatever economic incentives and tax incentives we can to the business owners and people who live here. That always improves the economy, and a rising tide lifts all ships.
Thank you. Leads right into, what is your opinion about the Post Office Plaza redevelopment project, which includes affordable housing? So we've got two things. We've got the redevelopment and affordable housing. We'll start with Ms. Matheson.
Thank you very much. Just to give you a little history on the Post Office Plaza, that project has been going on for years and years and was started by a completely different council. And their stated goal was to help the borough's budget as well as to revitalize downtown. During that time, the process had to be done twice because there were ethical concerns related to one of the council members and the sale of the deli building. So when I first joined the council, I was told by planners that the deli was so expensive that the project would have to be 4 stories for the investors to make more money, the money that they needed. And my response at the time, and it's on tape, was that it wasn't our responsibility to make sure the developers recoup their investment. I also, when I look at those spaces, believe that there could be some potentially better uses there. And I think a small scale development that enhances our downtown is a definite possibility. The question remains whether the property owners can come up with something that is the right scale and scope and has the right amenities, but they can earn a return on. The ball is in their court on that one.
Thank you. Mr. Bickness.
Yes, as I've been canvassing around trying to meet as many residents as I can throughout this campaign, about 50% say they hate the idea of the development that has been proposed. They don't want anything to be put there because they just want to keep the parking lot that's there now because they're very worried there's not going to be enough parking. But then the other 50% say, okay, put something small there. I have not met a single person who wants anything larger than 100 or 200 units. And I would say it should be no more than 3 stories to keep it on a reasonable scale and to not inhibit the beautiful charm of this town we already have. We have to balance the need for economic incentives and helping everybody in terms of finances with the problem of density and overpopulation and excessive traffic. Excessive traffic's already a huge problem here. And as far as affordable housing, we have to take that into account also. There's state laws which we follow. We just recently had a new settlement signed in the litigation about affordable housing, and I'm in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dempsey.
Thank you. I think that a development of manageable scale could really be an enhancement to our whole town, not just our downtown. I've worked on the Historic Preservation Commission to help keep this village-like feel to our town, and I think we can strike the right balance between density and scale. I will say that I'm opposed to doing anything that alters the charm of Chatham. And having additional foot traffic downtown can only help our economy and help the downtown. As Mr. Bickness noted, we do have a new settlement and amendment to our fair share housing agreement. And the good news there is actually we need to redo our redevelopment plan there, and it will reduce the density by about 58%. So that is really good news for a small scale development that could benefit our community there in the Post Office Plaza area.
Thank you. There seems to be a problem. I don't think it's unique to Chatham regarding downtown parking. What do you recommend to make parking more available, easier? We'll start with Mr. Bickney's.
Well, one thing I would not do is a garage. A tiny garage might be okay, but a massive garage would be such an eyesore. And I've heard from quite a few female residents who are very concerned about safety. Parking garages are not a great idea, and it would just really change the look of this town. But one thing we could do regarding parking is to reassess the fees and look at what other towns are charging. It may be that in light of COVID and inflation, the fees that we're charging are not the appropriate amount. We could also open up the parking to people who are from other towns who might want to pay a premium, and we could charge them, 50% more, whatever the market will bear. That will do a lot towards making up for the lost revenue that the town is suffering as a result of people not commuting as much anymore. So parking, just like traffic, they kind of go together. These are two of the major challenges that we're facing in this town, and you have to have a balanced approach and kind of look at one side versus the other. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dempsey?
I think that the parking issue is more an issue of awareness rather than actual parking spaces. We do actually have quite a bit of parking in the downtown behind Main Street. Of course, if you want to pull up and get your coffee right in front of TM Ward, there might not be 3 spaces right in front of the store there, but just around the corner, there is availability. So perhaps increasing signage, increasing awareness that we really do have parking behind the stores there. The good news with our train station parking is that it is coming back. We did take a big revenue hit during the pandemic, but that has increased, and the extent to which we will be not having revenue from the parking is lessened this year, maybe down only by 100,000, whereas we lost about 300,000 before. So good news in that area. Thank you.
Ms. Matheson?
So I would agree there's sort of 2 separate issues. One is parking downtown if you want to go to a restaurant or are trying to do some shopping. And the other issue is the train station parking, which has gotten pretty complex. In terms of the downtown parking, I do think that we need some more wayfinding so that people can see where there is parking available. There was a parking study done a few years ago, and it didn't find a huge deficit downtown, but people feel like there's a big deficit downtown. So I do think that we could do some more wayfinding and better signage on that. People who are going to restaurants can also park at the train station for free and then walk over. And there's probably some signage ways that we could encourage that. And we, for those who can't walk, we probably need some more handicap parking spaces right by the downtown so that those people can park right there and get out of their cars. So I think those are the major things. I won't go into the train station because it's a whole nother complicated issue.
Thank you. What steps would you like to take? What steps should be taken by the mayor and council to maintain our AAA bond rating? Ms. Dempsey.
We've done an incredible job with maintaining our AAA bond rating, and hats off to our incredible CFO, our borough administration, and our wonderful budget and finance committee, which is actually chaired by Ms. Matheson. During COVID, things could have really bottomed out. We mentioned the lost revenue from parking. There was additional lost revenue from our joint court investments. But they did an amazing job to keep us afloat. And it's really exciting that we're going to be having a great increase in revenue at the River Road redevelopment. That's going to be bringing millions of dollars into our borough over the next 30 years, which will hopefully in the next 20 years even possibly give us a chance to be debt free. And so we can pay for capital improvements in cash and not have to pay interest. And it will also improve a really blighted part of town.
Thank you. Ms. Matheson?
Thank you very much. There's really a structural issue with all municipal budgets in New Jersey, which is that we are pretty much held to a 2% tax increase, and property taxes are already a big burden. But there are certain costs that go up by more than 2% every single year, and they are absolutely beyond our control. Pensions, insurance, and healthcare, to name a few. And that's the majority of our budget. Our previous councils have done a lot of belt tightening, and they've done a lot of shared services to make our budget more efficient and to save money. We've also looked at, under my leadership, we looked at user fees for services that we were providing for free, such as zoning review for building expansions or new buildings. And we looked at our water and sewer connection fees, which are actually going to bring in several $100,000 this year. But in the long run, we need to find a way to shift tax burden away from residents and more towards commercial businesses.
Thank you. Mr. Bickness.
This may be the most important question that was asked, so I appreciate whoever asked it. The first thing we have to do is re-examine the 10-year financial management plan, which has not been re-examined or changed since, I believe, 2017. I would also like to look at the budget line by line and see, what can be changed, where can we cut a little bit, maybe across the board, 1% if it's possible for certain items. Other things can't be cut at all, but there's certain things that are possible. And I would start from the bottom up and not look at necessarily last year's budget, but look at each item and say, what is it really going to cost? And you could also increase the shared services with other municipalities, Summit or Madison. We already share certain things, but there could be other things that we could consider sharing so that you have efficiencies economically. And I would re-examine every contract that the borough has. The waste pickup, people hate those green bags, and they're expensive and they break very easily. So I would not be opposed to re-examining that contract or any contract. Why would you keep something if you can get it cheaper? Have a new bidding war.
Thank you. Okay, so that leads right into, which one was it? Well, let's go to the green bags. Chatham's garbage bags cost up to 10 times what standard garbage bags cost. There's been increasing chorus. Someone was very expounding on this among Chathamites regarding the poor quality, inconvenience, and it's difficult to use them. Should we keep them? Should we get rid of them? Is there an alternative? Ms. Matheson.
Thank you very much. The green bags has actually been kind of a project of mine to work on right now. We actually did a survey of residents to ask them how they felt about the green bags versus moving to another option. The benefit of the green bags is something called pay as you throw. You pay for the dumping fees for your garbage in the cost of the green bag. So it creates an incentive to recycle more, to reduce more, et cetera. So the intent is really good. But I think at this point, the administration has become very complex and expensive and frustrating for residents. And there are other ways to do pay as you throw. I don't want to go to a Madison kind of system where everybody can just put whatever they want at the curb and that's taken away, because that's extremely expensive and it does discourage recycling. But I would like to see us move to standard cans like Morris Township has, and then the one-armed bandits that can empty those cans. Labor right now is really short, so that's critical. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bickness.
Well, the most obvious solution would be to find a different vendor that makes better bags, or to put pressure on this vendor and say, look, we're really considering replacing you, and can you do something to make sure that they're higher quality? But that's not the only complaint people have. They don't like the idea that they have to pay so much money and go to the grocery store, once a month and get these bags. So we could consider other possibilities. Now, I'd also like to look at composting, which is one thing that environmentally aware people like to do. And if there's some way that the borough can encourage people to get into composting, because that would help not just the borough, but the whole planet. As I was saying before, we can reevaluate every expense on a line-by-line basis, including all of the shared services we have, So we could, suspend, certain things with some of the municipalities and say, we're going to take a break for now and try it by ourselves, or we can switch to a different municipality. We don't have to keep the current arrangements we have. And perhaps if we replace this system with something completely different, everybody will be happy.
Thank you. Ms. Dempsey.
As Ms. Matheson noted, a survey went out to the borough on to get people's feedback about the green bags. Some people do really like them because you, as she said, pay as you throw. You only pay for how much you throw. You're not paying for what everyone throws. Whereas for our bulk trash, we pay for what everybody throws out. I would like to see us move to something, like the one-arm bandits, like the standard cans. And I know that our environmental commission has done a lot to encourage composting, which obviously is good for the environment and would save on trash going into a landfill.
Thank you. What can and should the borough be doing to protect the environment? Mr. Bickness.
Yes. Well, as a Republican, I deviate from some of the other Republicans' beliefs on the climate. I absolutely believe that climate change is real. And every time there's a hurricane, I think that there is at least some component that is caused by humans. So I believe we should do something. But however, I think that mostly that should be done on a national, international level, also the state of New Jersey. The borough itself, I don't think should be interfering too much, to too great extent in the free markets and people's individual choices. But there are some things that I would consider. I'm not necessarily saying I would vote for this, but one idea is that on these gas-powered leaf blowers could be regulated a little more. Right now, it's just an incessant noise and pollution, and it's just maybe one of the worst things about living in the suburbs. So I would think about potentially having a study where we would figure out, what is the real damage here, and it would only be a ban on the contractors, not on the individual residents. They could use whatever they want.
Thank you. Ms. Dempsey.
This can seem like just a national issue, but it is, what we do to the, how we live day to day affects our environment. There's some things that we can do right now to help the environment on a local level, and things that we've done. For instance, our environmental commission worked with other communities to on the plastic bag ban. That has actually kept 3 million plastic bags. That's 3 million plastic bags out of Chatham, which is unbelievable. And you have an opportunity even this weekend at Fishawak to view the electric vehicle fair that's going to be there. And the Environmental Commission is actually also going to be talking about electric leaf blowers at that as well. We can promote things like the Tri-Town swap to keep trash out of our landfills and furniture out of our landfills, and perhaps stronger enforcement of no idling laws would help on our local level.
Thank you. Ms. Matheson.
Thank you. I very much agree that environmental protection should not be a partisan issue. We all live here, we're all neighbors, and most of this is pretty well established. And I really appreciate the Republican conservationists who kept the Great Swamp from becoming an airport and who saved wide swaths of public space in this area. Here are some things that I've been on the Environmental Commission my entire term in council, and here are some things that we have done. We want a grant to install electric vehicle chargers in some public lots because electrical vehicle infrastructure is a big motivator to getting an electric vehicle. On the River Road project, we required the developer to far exceed the building code in terms of energy conservation and other environmental measures. Every single parking space there will have conduit for electric vehicles. For any new construction, will need to have electric vehicle charging stations. And we ensured that no harmful pesticides are used on our playing fields. So those are just a few things that we've actually accomplished already.
Thank you. Total change of subject. A number of council members have indicated a potential willingness to consider having some type of marijuana businesses operate within the borough. If elected, would you vote to allow marijuana businesses, or would you vote to continue the current ban? Ms. Dempsey.
I voted to continue the current ban. We can examine what comes down the road, but currently I do not think that in our village of Chatham that a marijuana distribution, forgetting the word for it.
Dispensary.
Dispensary, thank you. A marijuana dispensary would be a good fit in our town, much as like I don't think a smoke shop or a gun shop or a tattoo parlor. So I would vote to keep those out of Chatham right now.
Thank you. Ms. Matheson.
Thank you. Yes, I also voted against allowing marijuana businesses in the community. I am supportive of marijuana legalization because I think that it is a big equal justice issue, and that marijuana, the illegality of marijuana was being used inequitably in different communities with different racial makeup. So I support legalizing it. But when I look at Chatham and the businesses that we have here and the businesses that we want here, I don't see any added benefit to having a marijuana dispensary or another marijuana business any more than I would like to see like a giant dive bar that where people are crowding out the streets and smoking and yelling and all of that. We have a certain character to our town, and we like it. I would really like to see legislation change so that medical marijuana could be obtained at any pharmacy. So I think that's my one exception. I think that that is an important issue that needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bickness.
Well, I absolutely would never support having recreational marijuana sold here. I think medical pot is different, and if somebody legitimately has a need that a doctor prescribed, then that's fine. But as the statute stands, it is ambiguous at best, and it is too difficult to allow medical pot without risking that it being interpreted to allow recreational pot. I would also not ever allow the manufacture or growing of marijuana because the smell is horrendous, I understand, and even worse than when you walk through New York City parks. So anybody who lives near there would be absolutely harmed by that. And obviously, the science we know now really shows that pot can harm people, not just their mind, but also their lungs, their body. And children would end up getting it because a 21-year-old would buy it and give it to an 18-year-old who gives it to a 15-year-old, and then even younger kids. And we all know that that's true. So this town should not allow that ever. And if you do ever once allow it, then it would permanently allow it because those businesses will be grandfathered in.
Thank you. How would you make Chatham a more diverse and more welcoming community? How can we make the town more welcoming to everyone and make it more inclusive? Ms. Matheson.
Thank you very much. I do think that when in the past few years, our country has become increasingly divided, and people have been taking sides on issues where we really all should be on the same side. Both Carolyn and I really focused on reaching out to members of minority communities in Chatham and figuring out ways to celebrate them and to hear from them and to make sure that we address their concerns. And it's been an absolutely wonderful, wonderful experience. Chatham is a lot more diverse than people realize, and our schools are even more diverse than Chatham on average. And I think that we should recognize that and celebrate it, not see it as a negative that Chatham isn't the same Chatham that it used to be. I really hope that we have been successful in making people of all backgrounds feel welcome in Chatham.
Thank you. Mr. Bickness?
My family and I have lived here 11 years, so I really have no idea what it was like 30 or 40 years ago. But we love it, and we find it to be a very inclusive, welcoming community. My wife is a Korean immigrant. She came here in 1999. Our children are biracial, and there are people all over our neighborhood who are all the different races you can imagine at the children's two schools, and all the different races that all get along. And I feel that this town is already now very welcoming and just wonderful and quite diverse. And everybody here that I know is tolerant. I don't believe that this is like some town in Arkansas where there's some kind of a problem like that. I believe we are already the welcoming town that we should be. We've had a Black gay mayor. We have now 4 out of 6 female representatives on the council. We have a Puerto Rican gay gentleman who was on the council, as well as a lesbian, I believe. And we are plenty diverse. So I think that this town is a wonderful place and we welcome everybody. Please come on in.
Thank you. I might. Ms. Dempsey.
I believe that the governing body can really set the tone for a community. And as Jocelyn Matheson mentioned, it was really a priority of ours to make sure that we take steps to make Chatham more welcoming. There unfortunately have been local incidents of bias more recently against members of our AAPI community, and in the past against our Jewish neighbors. So it is something that we need to work on. We're proud that we now recognize a variety of holidays in our borough council. We see our residents, holidays such as Diwali and Hanukkah and Lunar New Year. And it was a privilege of mine to coordinate with Irene Trelaw and other volunteers in our community for the first ever celebration of diversity event this past June. Which was an amazing outpouring of talent and support in the community. And we hope to continue.
Thank you so much.
Can I just respond with a quick rebuttal? I did want to say that racism does exist everywhere, even in very warm and friendly communities. And we have heard about incidents of racism. And while some residents don't see it and haven't experienced it, it doesn't mean that it isn't there. And it doesn't mean that we don't have a role to play to address that. And I try and play a role of listening and asking what people would like us to do differently. And I think that that's important. And if we don't acknowledge that it exists, we'll never be able to solve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Getting to money, what specific ways would you suggest that the borough control costs or keep taxes low? Is there any way of reversing fiscal expense growth? So what can we do to keep taxes low or even reduce them? Mr. Bickness.
Well, as a Republican, as you might imagine, I love the idea of lower taxes. And I think that may be very difficult in this challenging time, but I certainly like to stabilize them. The taxes here in the borough have gone up 6.5%, I believe, in the last 2 years. And that's just not something that I want to see continue. There may be some zillionaires who don't mind paying increased taxes, but most of us, including our lower income people and senior citizens on a fixed income, may find that to be a problem. I would certainly, just go through the budget as I was discussing before, and try to rebuild it from the bottom up and figure out what do we really need to spend on this particular item. Is there any way to cut this? And also we could re-examine certain fees that we are charging or maybe not charging. We could look at something where it's free right now and say, other towns are doing this. They're charging a small fee here. And those small fees can add up to a lot of revenue, over a year. And that can take the subsidy part out of it. And therefore you don't have to raise the taxes as much.
Thank you. Ms. Dempsey.
We have actually a very lean budget. We have a very lean staff, and over the years we have done that. We've gone line by line and tried to figure out where we can cut. And prior administrations have done a good job of getting it that way, getting it as lean as possible. So it's a challenge to look at new ways of finding revenue. So one thing that we do a very good job with shared services. Perhaps something else we could do is looking to share the buying of large equipment, such as DPW equipment, with other towns. That could possibly be a way to save money. Also examining our municipal contracts. We recently saved tens of thousands of dollars by hiring new legal counsel. And that was a big savings, a big improvement. And also as I mentioned, our River Road development is going to bring in millions of dollars, tens of millions over the next 30 years, which is really going to ease the tax burden on our residents.
Ms. Matheson? You're muted.
I apologize for that. I would like to say that while our council is democratic, we are also extremely fiscally conservative. And we are following on the tails of a very fiscally conservative council that came before us and who faced the 2008 crash that led to very low tax collections and other fiscal problems. So we really need to make sure that we budget carefully and thoughtfully for the long term. What I don't support is kicking the can down the road in terms of important infrastructure improvements that need to be made. I do agree professional services and shared services need to be revisited every year and look at where we can expand them. We already have looked at our service fees, as I mentioned earlier, and I do think that we need to look at expanding our grand list. That's our tax base, so that it's not just residential. I also would like to point out that your property tax bill that you get in the mail, of that, only 18% is going to the municipality. The vast majority is going to the schools and to the county and to the library, over which we have no control. So, so it's that little 18%, and then we're trying to squeeze within that 18%.
Thank you. Ms. Matheson? Ms. Dempsey, I'm sorry, you're muted. You're muted.
Thank you. I just wanted to address the tax increase of 6% over the 2 years that Mr. Bickney's mentioned. We're actually, that was a little under 3% one year and a little over 3% another year in the midst of a pandemic with extraordinary revenue losses. And so I'm really proud of the work our CFO and our Budget and Finance Committee did in order to keep it that low of an increase. It could have, other towns fared much, much worse.
Another subject. What are the borough's current obligations for affordable housing, and how should they be met? What can, and how would you address this? We'll start with Ms. Dempsey.
So we just had in 2020 a midpoint review and recently a settlement amending our Fair Share Housing Center agreement, which was agreed to in 2016. And some really good news for the borough came out of that. That we will be meeting some of our obligation with the River Road development. Also, that any future development will be kept to 15% affordable housing for rentals and 20% affordable housing for purchases, which is not new, but that new agreement, as I had mentioned previously, cut the potential density for any potential Post Office Plaza development in half. And there are other ways at looking at affordable housing, which are too numerous to go into in a minute.
Ms. Matheson.
Thank you very much. The Chatham Borough was the first in Morris County to settle with Fair Share Housing for affordable housing, and we had a very favorable settlement at the time. We were now the first to go through the midpoint review process. They got to reopen the agreement and make some changes to it, which do slightly increase our affordable housing obligation. But overall, it was the new agreement was a huge win for us. We need to meet our affordable housing obligations strategically, without segregating affordable housing away from other residential areas and without the borough itself bearing enormous cost. Other towns that have ignored this obligation and just fought, eventually have lost, and the bills that they have been presented with for having to build the affordable housing themselves have just been astonishing. So part of good fiscal management is also managing this affordable housing issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bickneys.
Well, I support the idea of affordable housing. I think that it helps our lower income people as well as our senior citizens on a fixed income. New Jersey law with a statewide statute provides for a general formula for how each municipality has to fulfill its obligation to have affordable housing, a certain percentage. And I believe the borough has been doing a great job on that. We were actually the first town in Morris County back in 2016 to begin the process and make a original settlement. And now we are in the next phase now. And I believe that until 2025, there cannot be any suits by builders regarding this matter. There was a recent June 14th settlement they call it the First Amendment to our litigation settlement. And I support in general part what is in there. I definitely agree that we need to have the River Road development, as well as the Bowers Lane affordable senior living centers, which will both go a long way towards affordable housing.
Thank you very much. You've already answered the midpoint review. And will the reduced number of units be better for the borough? Why or why not? Ms. Matheson.
Thank you. I assume that means the reduced number of units at the Post Office Plaza project.
I just know for the affordable housing agreement.
Okay, got it. Yes, absolutely. It's better for the borough. We're trying to have projects that are of an appropriate scope and scale for our community. And if we have a high number of affordable housing, we need, that's just 15% of what gets built. So you need to be looking at larger buildings. So the smaller number allows for a more appropriate scope and scale of projects than we would be required to have it otherwise. So to me, yes, that's a win.
Mr. Bickneys.
Well, I believe that in talking about these developments, whether it's the Post Office Plaza idea, the River Road one that's already underway, the Bowers Lane Senior Citizen Facility, we have to think about affordable housing very carefully and distribute those units around the town. They should not all be clumped together in one locality. And I think that you have to balance the need for affordable housing with the need to have other types of housing that brings in property taxes and higher income people, because we are in the midst of an economic problem here. We are recovering from the COVID crisis, but as we've been discussing in a lot of these questions, there's some financial problems. So I think you have to meet the state statutes obligations, and we're doing that. I believe that in most part, the agreement that's been reached is appropriate, and you have to also take into account the other economic considerations for the town and not give away more than we have to under the law.
Thank you. Ms. Dempsey.
As the law is right now, so any new building that we do over a certain number of units has to be, as I mentioned, 15% affordable housing for rental and 20% affordable housing for anything purchased. I'm absolutely, and I've always been supportive of with any sort of development like this, the affordable housing being included. And I think it's so important that we have affordable housing in Chatham, because Chatham's really expensive. And affordable housing is housing for professional firefighters, for teachers, for people who already live here, and for single mothers I've actually talked to a lot. And so at River Road and at Post Office Plaza, we have an opportunity to improve a blighted area at River Road, a contaminated area, and also with a small scale development at Post Office Plaza, bring some foot traffic to our downtown and people who would really want to live there and benefit from living there.
Thank you. Do you support the holding of meetings and hearings virtually with the ability of residents to comment and ask questions over Zoom or any other platform? And why or why not? Mr. Bickness.
You're referring to the council meetings themselves
Yes.
every 2 weeks. Well, not anymore. I think during the main part of the COVID crisis that was necessary, as were a lot of the restrictions that everybody on the planet has gone through. But at this point, especially in a town like this where 97 or 98% of adults have the vaccine, it's probably not necessary. And everybody has to wear masks now at the live meetings, which have just begun about a month ago. And that's appropriate. I think you have to do that. But I want to touch on something else about the council meetings. They should focus more on the local business of this town, things that are actually, like we've been talking about tonight, potholes and budgets and taxes, and not get into broader commentary about national issues, because we need to be focused now during this economic difficulty, and because of the COVID crisis still going on and other things that may come up. Let's focus on the challenges that actually are facing us here in this borough, and not get distracted too much and spend an excessive amount of time on things that are, broad and that we cannot specifically handle here.
Thank you. Ms. Dempsey.
Could you repeat the question? I think I may have heard it incorrectly.
I may have stated it incorrectly. If elected, would you support the holding of meetings and hearings virtually with the ability of residents to comment and ask questions over Zoom or another platform? Why or why not?
Okay, thank you. Lots of bad things came out of having a pandemic. One good thing is the new technology. And so I absolutely support having our in-person meetings, but I support having this hybrid version where people who are not able to attend our meetings can attend through Zoom, either, from home or before they leave work. It really has expanded our audience and our reach to our residents. And so I would absolutely be in favor of continuing that. Not only are we having residents participate via Zoom, but they also can watch via Facebook Live, which they weren't able to before. So continuing this hybrid version to allow more participation from our residents, I would absolutely support.
Thank you. And Ms. Matheson.
Yeah, I really love the hybrid version. I understand that there's some residents who really want to be able to physically stand up there and talk directly to the council. But there are also working moms who are making dinner who can't possibly take their evening to physically go down to Borough Hall. And they can now not only watch what's going on, but they can ask questions and get answers. Summit has decided not just to do in-person and not to do hybrid, and there's a huge outcry about that. So I really hope that we don't contract our audience as we move to in-person meetings. The in-person meetings, I hope that we can continue them. This crisis is not over yet. It is continuing, and we don't know what's going to happen going forward. And I would like to point out that the council, as volunteers, are pretty crowded in there. And I've been taking care of my 91-year-old uncle. We have 2 cancer survivors on the council. We have somebody with a young child who's not vaccinated. So I'd like to, have consideration for those people as well as the audience.
Thank you. Mr. Bickness.
Oh, yes, I think I misunderstood the original question as I went first. I would be fine with continuing the hybrid structure. I thought you were just asking whether we should have live versus completely virtual. Of course, forever, long after COVID's over, we should continue allowing people to call in and watch the meetings live through the computer. There's no problem whatsoever, even though typically there's some technical problem and we can't, hear and see the people, and I would try to work on those problems, but there's no problem with having this hybrid structure. That's beautiful. Let people who want to come in, come in. People who want to not come in, not come in. That's the solution.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing. Yes.
Okay, can I have one other quick response? On the issue of wasting our time on proclamations at the beginning of the meetings, every council has done proclamations at the beginning of meetings. The Morris Township Committee does proclamations at the beginning of meetings. They do Autism Awareness Day, Mental Health Awareness Month, Flag Day, Veterans Day, suicide prevention. So this has actually been made an issue for some reason in this campaign. And it appears to be because we're now also recognizing Black History Month and Pride Month. And I had a mom of a gay kid told me how important that was to her. Doesn't take a lot of time. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. And I think it's important to our community.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your views. And now I'd love to hear from each of you about why you were the best candidate to run for this office. So we're going to go in reverse order, starting with 2 minutes, Ms. Matheson.
Thank you very much. Before Carolyn and I ran for the first time, we dug into the borough's budgets, financial reports, and minutes of old meetings. We met with the administrator, the engineer, the community services director, the police chief, and others. We talked to hundreds of residents. We worked hard to get elected, and we worked hard when we were in office. And that is what it takes. Even though this is an unpaid job, it is one with a great weight of responsibility. The responsibility of overseeing your pocketbook and the quality of life in a community where you chose to live. We take that very seriously. I think it would be unfortunate if voters picked someone who was less qualified or less committed on the basis of the letter after his name and had promised to disagree with the rest of the council in the name of so-called balance. That is a recipe for gridlock and unpleasantness that we've seen elsewhere, and we want to avoid it in Chatham. I lived here when we had an all-Republican council, a mixed one, and an all-Democratic one, and I found it always to be congenial and a thoughtful group with lots of input and opinions, regardless of party, coming together for the best of our community. I would like us to pledge to maintain that culture. We have a great council with a wide range of expertise and interests, business, law, management, and surprisingly relevant history, philosophy, and language, to name a few. My running mate, Carolyn, is truly one of these town gems with her deep roots in the community and ability to get people to come together with compassion and understanding. It is an honor to work with her. To that, I believe I provide a valuable and unique understanding of the inner workings of government and how it can be made better. And I have the time, energy, and willingness to put my talents and expertise to work in that direction. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to participate in tonight's event. I really want to thank the League and the NAACP for the incredibly important work that you do. And thank the residents of Chatham. Please remember to mail in your ballot or vote on November 2nd. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Dempsey.
Making Chatham an even more welcoming community, supporting our local businesses, enhancing the poorly used parts of our small town through smart development, and creating spaces that benefit our residents through the acquisition of the former Stanley Church and refurbishing our parks with walking paths, new basketball and tennis courts, and trails. Prioritizing communication with residents through office hours, surveys on garbage and recreational services, and hosting the first ever Borough open house. Initiating new community traditions that bind us together with our neighbors, like the summer concert series, while preserving old favorites like Fish-A-Whack and the Farmers Market, all the while being very fiscally responsible and maintaining our AAA bond rating. And finally, leading our town through a pandemic by nimble budgeting, effective communication with residents, and caring for those most hurt by the pandemic through creating the Chatham Community Food Distribution. Phew, this is what Jocelyn and I have packed into nearly 3 years that we've been serving on the Borough Council, and that we hope to continue on. We show up, we work hard, and we respond to the needs of our residents. I was raised to value volunteerism and public service with parents who were prominent volunteers and relatives who were a mayor, state senator, and in active military duty. Early on, I interned for my congressman on Capitol Hill, and I was recruited by the CIA into covert operations. I chose another path, which included being a music teacher and full-time mom, and has led me to being a happy resident of Chatham since 2001. We have a wonderful town, and Jocelyn and I are always looking at ways to make it even better, more efficient, and more welcoming. We are your neighbors, and we love this town just like you do. So thank you for participating with us this evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters and the NAACP for hosting. We're grateful to our residents for this opportunity to serve, and we hope to earn your vote when you cast your ballot this fall. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Mr. Bickness.
Thank you, everybody who attended or who will watch it in the future, perhaps sometime between now and November 2nd. The voting has already begun as the mail-in ballots were sent out. And I hope that not too many people voted before seeing this important debate. So thank you to the League of Women Voters and the NAACP and everybody else who contributed, as well as the two Democrat incumbents. I appreciate you being here. If the voters remember nothing else about Freddie Bickney's from tonight's debate, just remember that I am the one who wants to bring a different voice, some balance. Right now, it's 7-0 elected Democrats and 0 Republicans in the Borough Council. And a few years ago, it was actually the other way around. It was 7-0 Republicans. And at that time, I thought, even though I'm Republican, we could use maybe 1 or 2 or 3 Democrat voices, because groupthink's not a good thing. And when you have an echo chamber and everybody seems to just agree on every issue, well, that's a very unhealthy way of making decisions. And when some big crisis like COVID should come up out of nowhere, and who knows what's going to come up in the next few years, you want to have a whole bunch of different ideas. I also think we need to have transparency in local government, and I would do anything that I could to assure we have transparency. I think the most important issue facing us right now is this proposed development, Post Office Plaza. And I think it would be okay to have a smaller scale development that doesn't dramatically increase traffic, that is, 3 or less stories, and that does not change the beautiful character of our lovely town here. So I want to point out that as it's 2 Democrats and 1 Republican on the ballot this year, those who are considering voting for me, you don't have to use your second vote for Democrat. You can vote straight Republican if you want to send a message to the local government that you believe it's time for a new voice, that you need more balance, and that you believe that we should have at least 1 new perspective on the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank the 3 of you. It was wonderful hearing from you. You have different perspectives, and I'm sorry to say that the voters have some serious work ahead of them. Thank you for your participation, and to the League of Women Voters of the Morristown area and the Morris County branch of the NAACP for sponsoring this event. Again, you will be voting for 2 of these candidates for Borough Council. Also on the ballot are New Jersey Governor, State Senator, and Assembly persons, and 2 ballot questions, one on permitting betting on all college sports or athletic events, and one on allowing organizations that conduct raffles to use the proceeds to support their organization. These can be reviewed on the Morristown website, and this video also can be viewed there, can be seen there, but now and later. It must be shared with the community in its entirety, and it cannot be used in any campaign. Now, first you have to, if you have not, you have to register to vote by October 12th. If you are a new resident, if you have changed your name, changed your residence, or become of age, you must register to vote. And once you have, there are 3 ways to vote this election season. You can request to vote by mail ballot at vote.nj.gov before October 26th. You can vote early in person from October 23rd through 31st at certain specified locations in the county. Again, see vote.nj.gov for those locations. And if you're traditional, on November 2nd, you can go to your polling place, which will be noted on your sample ballot on November 2nd between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. While many consider the presidential election to be the most important, you have heard from the candidates about their positions on issues which affect your everyday life. Make a wise decision and cast your vote. Thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you
night.
all.